So Elaine, thank you. You're always such a good friend to Achieve a Family Trust, and we've used you so many times over the years, but this might be our biggest crowd yet for you. So thank you.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. It is such indeed a pleasure and a privilege to be with you just once again. Again, Maria and Patty, I am just so excited to be here to share more information about Social Security. Please, if you have any questions, you have your options as Patty has described for you, and they're monitoring it because I want you to understand this information as it applies to you or those that you serve. But if you do have some more personal questions in regards to your Social Security cases, this is my email address. Again, Patty and Maria know how to get a hold of me whenever necessary. I will be out and about visiting several different agencies, getting this information out. But this is the best way to contact me by Elaine.Cole@ssa.gov. You know, working with the federal government, we always want to say this is the information that we know right now. As you know, Congress and our new commissioner is always making some changes in which to make it better. But please make sure that you visit our website for the most up-to-date information. And if you have signed up and created yourselves an account, that information will come to you as soon as it has changed. So make sure you remember, changes are always happening, especially again, stating that Commissioner O'Malley is making a lot of changes with the short time that he's been our commissioner. And as you know, Congress is always looking at what we can do in which to make Social Security for all of those that qualify. So let's talk about disability. As for what SSDI, or sometimes referred to as SSD, this always provides a monthly benefit to people are unable to work because of a significant disabling condition. Social Security does not pay partial or temporary disability benefits. So therefore, if you have a medical condition that is expected to last for at least 12 months or is expected in death, or if that person is younger than full retirement age and earns less than what we call substantial gainful activity. And through this seminar, you might hear me say SGA. So for this year, that amount is $1470 for those that are not non-blind. And those individuals that are blind, they would be considered at $2,460 of what would be considered SGA. And they have recent work and a certain number of work credits based on their age. So therefore, looking at this information, this is one way that you can say, okay, let me check the boxes. I have this medical condition. It's going to be expected to last for at least a year, or it's going to result in death. I'm younger than full retirement age. I'm not earning SGA. And during the easiest part is the last 5 years. Have I been working? So looking at the next slide, the definition of disability is a person who cannot work due to a severe medical condition. And you might want to write this down, where we have something called a blue book. And this blue book will list all of the medical conditions. And at that point, you can see if that particular severity of that medical condition is listed. And this is one way to find out if that might be an approved claim. But as always, this particular medical condition is expected to last for at least 1 year, or the result is death, or the person's medical condition is preventing them from substantial gainful activity. So the what we're looking for is about the condition, and then also the how it's limiting their vocational or their work, that is preventing them from adjusting to other work, or that they are just unable to do any type of work whatsoever. So these are things that are being looked at in which to describe if your disability is severe enough to get an approved claim.
Just a quick clarification, Elaine. A couple of people have commented on the SGA amount listed on the slides being the 2023 figures and not 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. The technician that built this for me, I may have sent this over to Achieva prior to the updates. If you would please, Maria, if you could look at the fact sheet for 2024 and give me those numbers as we continue through the slides. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, someone just posted that the SGA was 1550 for 2024, 2,590.
Very good. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
One of the, yes. Okay.
I'm very good. And this is very good. Then I know you're paying attention out. I appreciate that.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. And thanks whoever answered that. Thanks.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. When should you apply for disability benefits? You want to apply as soon as you become disabled, meaning that, first of all, that you've noticed that your work has been reduced because of this disabling condition, or you have stopped working completely. If that is the case, then you want to apply for disability. But if you're still working and you're still above SGA, then you know that this is not the proper time in which to file for disability, because it will not go any further because we know that you're above SGA. So when we're processing that particular application, it's going to take anywhere from 3 to 5 months in which to look at your medical conditions. But if we know right at the beginning that you're still working above SGA, then we're going to automatically deny that and then remind you to let us know if you go below SGA, then at that point, you would like to file. Make sure that when we're processing your application, that if all your information is included, meaning that you want to be give us the story from the beginning, even though you're not applying for your disability right when you became disabled, but you want to let us know the history of your particular disability. You want to tell it from the beginning. You want to tell your story, what's going on in the middle. And as things are beginning to any progress with your status, if whatever doctors, whatever medications, whoever has been seeing you in which to assist you while you're living with this disability or disability, you want to make sure that you are thorough and give us all of that information. This is the number one reason why a lot of people are denied, because they're not telling us the full story. If you provide us with all the details, especially if we can go out and speak to those particular facilities or doctors or nurses or anyone that, even if they were drawing blood from you, if we can get all of that information and compare that to the rules and procedures of what the disability means, then we can give you a clear decision, whether it's approved or if it's denied. But if you don't let us know something, we can't evaluate it and make a good decision about your case. So as we continue on to the next slide, how do you apply? What you would want to do is actually you could file online, or you can contact us by making an appointment at our 1-800 number. The reason why we always tend to recommend or highly recommend going to the SSA.gov site is because there's a lot of information that you need to provide us. And you have the opportunity that if you go on and start filing, especially that medical report, if you file that information online, then that is going to save time. So even if you want to make an appointment for the actual application, the largest part of the appointment is this exact medical report. And a lot of times you may have to save and go back to it because you can't find all the information that you want to fulfill in that part of the application. So I always suggest that you go to the SSA.gov website, at least fill out the medical report so that whenever you want to do the application, it's a smooth process. Usually there's only about 2 to 2.5 hours that is allotted to an appointment that has been scheduled. Usually the application, we could get that done within 30 minutes. But if you don't have all of your prescriptions in front of you, you don't have all of the history of the hospital stays that you've had, the different facilities that you have visited that have been treating you for this particular condition, you may miss something during that allotted 2.5 hours that you have with one of our representatives. When we send that document to the Department of Determinations for evaluation, they are just going to look at what's in front of them. They're going to look at those files and request that information be sent to your particular facilities that you listed. But if you miss something or if your dates don't exactly match what we find what we ask for from that facility, a lot of times that facility won't go back and say, well, you know what, you missed this, and still send it to the Social Security Administration. So therefore, they send us what we asked for, and we can only determine what they have responded with in your medical file. So we're going to talk about that a little bit further in this particular seminar, but I find that this is a good time to reinforce that if you tell your story, then you may get the result that you're looking for whenever we finish evaluating your claim. So on the next slide.
Elaine, I don't know if this is a good time to ask this, but we had a couple questions that came up about the Blue Book and whether autism is listed in the Blue Book and whether the Blue Book is available on SS.gov.
Yes, it is. If you type in Blue Book in the search field, it'll come up with all of the different conditions that Social Security is evaluating in your particular application.
And someone asked about autism being one of those conditions.
Yes, there's the degrees that are listed in the Blue Book as well. Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just one more comment about the Blue Book. Just like a car, that's how it's listed for medical conditions. So whenever you look at a car Blue Book to find out the value of that particular car, that's how we use the Blue Book for the medical conditions. All right. So what are we going to do and what happens next. As for your application, we're going to make sure that we review it, making sure that the basic requirements, and like I said, work is a big deal in that particular response. We're looking to see if either you have limited or you're not working anymore. So that's one of the requirements that we're going to be looking at closely. We're going to check if you have worked enough years to qualify and evaluate your current work activities. And if you meet those requirements, we're going to send it to the Disability Determination Services, otherwise known as DDS. The one that we use in our area of Western Pennsylvania is they are located in Greensburg. And again, thankfully, we're living in an area that they really work very diligently, making sure that you get a result of either an approved or denied claim within 3 to 5 months. Next, when we take a look at this slide, when we look at this slide, how we are going to determine the disability determination, again, work. Is your medical condition severe? We want to refer you to the Blue Book. Does your impairment meet or medically equal a listing? Again, in your Blue Book. Can you do the work you did before? That's some of the questions that you're going to be answering on that medical report that you're completing. Can you do any other type of work? That's something that you're going to be answering in a series of questions in regards to what are the limits of your condition that is disabling you from actually working at the rate that you were previously. Next, as for the state agency, what we are looking for them is to make that medical determination about you. Social Security sends that out, and we have in each state that we have the DDS office that will be making those medical decisions for us. So that is an indicator that it is federally funded. And DDS in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is independent on that medical decision, because we're paying them in which to determine if your condition is enough information to approve, or they will decide to deny your claim. They use that medical evidence from your doctors, your hospitals, your clinics, or institutions. But I want to make one additional note in regards to the Disability Determination Service. If there is not enough information for them to make a determination, please remember they may ask you to see one of their medical doctors to give you an evaluation. If they do, please keep that appointment. They pay for you to get to that particular office for them to do that medical evaluation. There are any charges that, if you have to take an Uber or if you have to take a cab or whatever it may be, they will pay for you to get to that particular doctor. There's no charge for that evaluation. But if you are contacted and they are asking for that particular medical examination by DDS doctors, please keep the appointment or speak to that person that is evaluating your claim, that if you can make reschedule the appointment. But if you are unable to do so, it is to your advantage that you keep that exam, because obviously they do not have enough information in which to make that final determination. If you choose not to go to the medical exam, usually that is a denial right away. that you will receive a letter indicating that you have been denied based on the medical evidence, meaning that there wasn't enough in which to make that determination. Next.
Elaine, a couple questions related to the application process. Someone asks, is there a checklist of necessary documents for the applicant to obtain before they even fill out the application?
No, there isn't no specific medical forms or documents that are necessary. We will supply you with the 827, which is a release that we have you sign so we can get your medical evidence. What you would need to do is make sure that you have the information available for us to send it to a specific doctor that has your records so we can obtain them for the evaluation process. But there's nothing ahead of time that you have to ask for. It's just that you need to be in the know as for what hospitals, what doctors, give us the specific names, hopefully the location that you actually went to see this particular doctor. And if you have a phone number for that particular doctor, that's all that information that you will need to be putting onto your medical report.
Okay.
Maria, do you have another question?
Actually, someone asked about applying again for SSDI, and I think you may be going to cover this when the parent disabled child benefit, when the parent's collecting Social Security.
We're going to be going over that later on in the presentation. But if you could just annotate that to make sure that I've hit that point, that would be great.
Great.
Okay.
And someone does ask how, just one more on this application, how is the amount of the payment determined? Once again, you might be going to cover that. I don't know.
Okay. Remember, SSDI and retirement benefits are all based on work history. So, and we're going to speak about SSI as for the differences, but right now we're talking about those that are attached to somebody's wage history. It could be a parent, it could be a child that has a work history, but it's those that have been paying taxes off of their wages that we're speaking about SSDI.
Okay.
Does that answer that question for you, Maria?
Well, hopefully we'll see if we get any additional questions. We did get someone else just popped up with, how do I find out if the medical reports have to be reviewed? And how can we find out if the medical reports have to be reviewed in the application process?
The medical report will always be reviewed whenever the Department of Determinations takes a look at your application, and they need the supporting evidence of your medical report in which to make that evaluation. So that is all part of the process. Once you submit it, it'll be evaluated by the DDS team.
Thank you. That's good.
Okay, for benefits for the family. And I think this is speaking to one of the questions that Maria has. As for the spouse, if the particular higher wage earner is actually receiving benefits, a spouse can receive those benefits at the age of 62. If they have a spouse that is caring for a child who is under 16 or disabled, the spouse can also apply for benefits. And also, divorced spouses may qualify for benefits off of that particular higher wage earner. Now, as for children, of course, they are unmarried and under the age of 18. If they're still in high school, we will continue to pay them until 19 and 2 months. But if they're scheduled to graduate, and let's say that they decided their graduation, the school district has decided their graduation time would be in June. But that particular child turns 18 in the month of April. At that point, usually 3 months before their 18th birthday, there's going to be a form sent out to that particular child. And it's going to say that they need to take this to their counselor at their school district to sign off that they're a full-time student at that particular high school. This will keep those particular payments going until the month of June when they graduate. If they fail to fill out that form at the school district and that's not turned over to the Social Security Administration, their particular benefits will discontinue until that form is completed. But if that particular child has left school and or has graduated, we automatically terminate those particular benefits. However, if that particular child is now considered a disabled adult child, and of course the person or the parents is still receiving their particular benefits, then we can look at disability before the age of 22 and ask for them to complete an application as well, that they would be coming as a disabled adult child as opposed to a child that was under 18. Again, the process would be the same, that they would be looking at if their conditions are expected to last for at least a year. We would be looking at their work history if they have been working. At that point, there may be a possibility that they would be able to qualify for SSDI on their own record. And it could be that it could be a combined benefit, that they would have some from the higher wage earner or the mother or father of that particular record, and they could be receiving benefits on their own. So depending on what their work history is, will depend on how much they will receive from Social Security. That's why it's really important to look at those benefit statements, ensuring that your particular wages are posted properly on your record, because that's how we are able to compute not only your Social Security disability, but what your retirement benefit would be. And it is very important, especially if you're the worker or the parent that has children that are entitled to benefits. What you do in your particular employment makes a difference, as not only for how much you're going to receive, but also how much your children or your spouse may receive. And if it's inaccurate on your work history, then we could possibly be paying you incorrectly, and that could cause either an overpayment or an underpayment to those that could receive benefits from your record. So it's really important to take a look at those wages that have been posted to your record every single year. So as we go to the next slide, you need to tell Social Security if you have an outstanding warrant for your arrest, if you have been convicted of a crime, or you have violated a condition of parole or probation. In that particular case, it could be that we would have to suspend your particular application, or if you're receiving benefits, we would need to also suspend your benefits. As we look to the next slide, now we're going to get into SSI.
Elaine, we have a couple of questions prior to going on to SSI. One question is that will Social Security contact a divorced spouse? Says, what if the divorce was hostile, can the spouse block benefits?
As for that, if you have a hostile ex-spouse, first of all, Social Security benefits are built on the merits of that particular number holder's record, meaning that we're looking at their wages, meaning that we're looking at the medical report, making sure that everything is proven in regards to the severity of that particular medical issue. As for if an ex-spouse, if they say that person is not physically, they're receiving benefits based on a lie, that that particular person is not disabled. First of all, they do not have the ability in which to block your benefits. However, if there is any question in regards to that, that some of your information might have been falsified, of course, Social Security could open an investigation, but it is not by just word of mouth that this person's allegation is going to be accepted by Social Security. Everything is always investigated. However, if the number holder has been the investigation shows that there has been falsification of an application to a federal officer, then at that point, yes, not only would the benefits stop, there would also be prosecution of falsifying records and taking disability payments or monthly payments from Social Security under false pretenses. But that is court ordered and an investigation would have to have been ensued.
And then one other question was someone suggested to please tell the participants about the family maximum that limits benefits based on work history of a parent.
Okay. When we're deciding on how much you're going to receive from the Social Security disability portion, or SSD or SSDI, we are looking at a formula. Of course, the worker never is reduced. So that work history, as I had indicated before, is based on your work history. So that's why it's so important that you look at your wages each particular year, making sure that your W-2 matches exactly what Social Security has posted on your record. When we develop your computation, you will see what your monthly benefit would be. Also, you will see how much your particular family maximum would be. For instance, if you have a spouse, there's only but so much that can be paid against your record. As I have indicated, the actual worker, we're not going to reduce their particular benefit. As for the spouse, they would be entitled to 50%. As for your children, they're entitled to 50%. But there's a bucket that has a family maximum of what we can pay off of that particular record. So, for an example, if you are the particular worker and you are eligible for $1,500, you will receive your $1,500. But as for the individual spouse and as for each child, they're entitled to 50%. So that's $750 per person. But if your family maximum only is up till $3,000, we know that originally $1,500 of that $3,000 maximum bucket, $1,500 is only left that we can pay out to a spouse and a child. If that was the case, if we only had one spouse and one child that we had to pay, then we could split the remaining $1,500. It would meet the 50% level that they're entitled to, and that would be the maximum that we could pay on that particular account. But if we had a spouse and two children, they would not receive the full 50% because the bucket only has $1,500 left in which to pay. So therefore, that $1,500 would be split between the spouse and the additional two children. So they would not receive the full 50%, but would receive whatever was left in that bucket. And in this case, we were talking about the additional $1,500 that was left. So depending on how many people that can actually receive benefits from a specific record, always remember the number holder will never be reduced. They will get their full amount. But if they have to share that family maximum with the rest of those that can benefit from that record, it could be 50%. It could be that whatever is remaining would be split among the recipient or the beneficiaries that could receive that additional amount.
So Elaine, just to follow up, two questions about how is the family max determined, and how do you know what the record holder max is? So it's kind of the same
Right.
question.
Again, if you look at your benefit statement, it gives you that information. So it tells you, number one, what the number holder or the worker is eligible to receive. And then it will tell you what that particular beneficiary could receive after that. Those with lower income, oftentimes the worker is at that is actually the family maximum. So if they had $1,000 to their record and their bucket only held $1,000, then yes, a beneficiary is entitled, but there is no additional amount available in which to pay the spouse or any children. So it would be almost to the fact that you would be looking at if that particular worker passes away, then that bucket would be available in which to split between a spouse and children.
Yeah, because someone asked about if someone on the record passes, will the other beneficiaries increase?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right. SSI, Supplemental Security Income. This particular program is a needs-based program. It is a federal program. However, it has nothing to do with the Social Security part of the trust fund. This program is funded by the general trust fund. When you receive payments from this portion or this particular program, that means that the person that is receiving it has limited income and limited resources, very similar to those that are on the welfare program. As for those that recipients that are eligible for supplemental security income, or those that are 65 or older, those of any age, including children who are blind or have disabilities, and have limited income and resources. Again, this is something that we're looking at very closely, but what is very good about what you can do with SSI, Achieva, and Achieva Family Trust can tell you more information in regards to the ABLE accounts, different ways that you can have these trust funds available and still receive your SSI. Now, of course, I'm going to leave that to the professionals to give you more information on the ABLE accounts and the trust funds with my wonderful friends of Maria and Patty. But I want to go over the regulations of the SSI program. So let's go on to our next slide in which to find out what we can do in regards to the requirements. So we're looking at, for eligibility, you have to be limited in income and very few resources, be age 65 or older, be totally or partially blind. Again, if you look at the blue book, it can give you what the different vision parameters are in regards to letting you know if you fall in that particular category. If you have a medical condition that keeps you from working and is expected to last for at least 1 year or result in death. Remember, this is an adult claim. There's different rules for children. And as we navigate through the process, remember, if you came on as a child, does not necessarily mean that you will qualify under the adult rules to get SSI. So let's go to the next slide. Requirements for getting SSI. Your income, the money you receive, such as wages, Social Security benefits, and pensions. Income also includes such things as food and shelter. However, under our new administration, Commissioner O'Malley, he has removed food from that particular evaluation part of the process. As I said, things constantly change. Make sure that you keep up with the SSA.gov website for all the changes that are going into existence with this. So that is a big deal. Before, we had to see how many times you actually would eat at that particular household, or how many times did you go out. Well, now that has been disregarded whatsoever. You don't have to worry about that. As for your resources, things you own, such as real estate, bank accounts, cash, stocks, and bonds, that may be a resource that will be counted in which to get the maximum of SSI. Where you live, this is a big one. You must live in the United States or the Northern Mariana Islands. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you have to be lawfully residing in the United States. You still may be able to get SSI. But again, you would want to speak with the local Social Security office because they have an actual value that they can find out if you would qualify for SSI because you're not necessarily a U.S. citizen, or you may be in process of becoming a U.S. citizen. But always ask the question, because you never know when the answer is yes opposed to a no. As for the next slide, this should look very familiar to all of you. The definition of disability under SSI is the same as it is for SSD. Remember, if you are unable to work due to a severe medical condition and it's expected to last for at least 1 year or result in death, or that person is just unable to sustain a substantial gainful employment, or SGA, and that their condition is preventing them from actually working. So keep that in mind. The definition doesn't change regardless of what program we're looking at. What you have to remember is that it's very specific. You may have a disabling condition, but you're still working with that disabling condition. It might be that this is a short-term medical condition. Remember, it has to last for at least 1 year. So Let's move to the next slide. What is exactly income? If you can make annotations about this, there's the difference between earned and unearned benefits. So at that point, you're looking at your wages, you're looking at net earnings from your self-employment, payment for services in a sheltered workshop. If you're working in and you're in a program and they're paying you, you will notice that they're taking Social Security taxes. So if that's the case, if they're taking taxes or if you're receiving this check on a normal basis, this is all considered income. So therefore, you need to report that. As for unearned income, of course, that's Social Security benefits, veterans benefits, unemployment benefits, interest, pensions, cash from family and friends. That's all reportable income. Now, one thing about in Pennsylvania, as for unemployment benefits, yes, we need to know that for the SSI program. However, remember, if you're unemployed and you're filing for disability, one thing that the Commonwealth will ask you, are you free and available in which to look for work? If you are saying that you're filing for disability, there is a misconnect with that, because if you're disabled, you may not be available for employment. So keep that in mind if you have just recently become unemployed and have filed for unemployment benefits. Of course, for Social Security purposes, you could definitely file for disability, but remember, you're still going to be asked that question from the Department of Labor if you're free and available to work. So that's most important, and I just wanted to highlight that for you. So as we look to the next slide, as for resources, you can see that that's bank accounts, stocks, bonds, 401ks, a second car, life insurance, property other than where you live. So if you're looking at, well, what my home count as a resource, your home in which you live does not count. If you have one car, if you have a burial plot for yourself and family, and if you have some resources set aside for burial. As for the limit, it's $2,000 for an individual, and for a couple, it's $3,000. Okay. Any questions, Maria, before we move to living arrangements?
So someone did ask about what does it mean for people paying room and board? I guess, how does room and board perhaps impact benefits? I'm not sure.
Okay, that's a good segue. We're talking about living arrangements. So as for living arrangements, which is another factor how we determine SSI, and once they have an approved claim. If someone else is in the household, if you're in an institution or in a group care or board and care facility. As we go to the next slide, let's just say for living arrangements, we're going to say to you, you have to report your status in regards to what type of household you're living in, if you're working, anything like that. You must report that, especially under the SSI rules. Reason being is living arrangements could make a difference of getting a full SSI check as opposed to one that has been reduced, because you're not paying your fair share of that particular household expense. So when you are in a particular household and there's 3 other people living with you, there has to be an amount that you're going to be responsible for that particular household. So certain times when a person, especially if they're becoming an adult, they are now 18 or older. And prior to that particular parent was making too much money, but they were still able to get some particular SSI for that particular child. Now that particular child is 18, they've received an adult determination, it has been approved. So now we need to know, what are you going to be responsible for in that particular household? Meaning that, are you going to contribute your something of your SSI check in which to be responsible for what you do in that particular household? So we're going to ask if you are, what the bills are in that particular household. Sometimes that parent will say, you know what, I'm not going to charge them. And that's fine. However, because that arrangement has been made between you and your particular child or that particular SSI recipient, we're going to reduce that full amount of SSI to what we call a B living arrangement. B as in boy. If that person was paying their fair share to the household, then their living arrangement would be considered A for apple. So either you could be either a living arrangement of A or a living arrangement of B. If that is the case, it is all based on the interview that you have provided to the Social Security Administration. When you became eligible for the SSI as an adult, we are asking you questions. How much are you paying for rent? How much are you paying towards the electric bill, and so forth? And if your particular responsibilities are not matching to the household composition, then your particular living arrangement would be a B living arrangement, and you would not receive the full amount for SSI. But if you're paying your fair share in a household of 4, then you would receive the full amount.
So Elaine, actually, not to interrupt you, but I am interrupting you. I'm sorry, but it really is, your answer to this question, I think, is apropos to the one person who says that she's the rep payee for her 19-year-old son with autism, and she had a reeval, and she wondered why they were asking her questions about her personal car, the value of a car, my personal 401, life insurance. They seem more interested in me than my son with a disability. And I'm wondering if it's related to this issue, if he was on SSI, calculating the household.
Exactly. That's exactly. When you're looking at a needs-based program, they're going to probe into your information, because we need to determine if the need has been satisfied, that your income and resources are, as it seems, very limited. Now, that's how you can tell the difference between the programs. We're not going to ask you about your SSDI as for, what bills you're paying, because you have worked for that particular program for retirement for SSDI. But with the SSI program, as I have indicated, that's like a welfare program. Income and resources, these questions have to be asked, and it really does seem intrusive at times. That's the only way that the government can determine if the need has been met, and that we can provide the full amount, or we might have to reduce the amount because the responsibilities are not as high. So all that being said, yes, I would say without being there, that was more likely because they needed to know the responsibilities of what that check would do for the household.
And actually, someone clarified about the room and board question. It was that new rule that excluded food and
Right.
whether that had any bearing on the room and board.
Like I said at the beginning, as for food has been excluded, so we're not going to ask how many meals do you do in that particular household. So that has been excluded under the commissioner. Okay.
All right.
All right. We're rolling along, Maria. So let's go to the next slide. Everybody always asks me, what do I report? I simply say everything. If we don't have, because this is just a list that we use, but there's other things that have popped up over the time period, especially in Allegheny County. There was certain subsidies that were done during the pandemic, and Social Security wasn't sure how to adjust that under the SSI rules. But if you report it to us, at least we can look at what type of direction policy has to do with that. And the only reason why we really encourage you to report everything is to ensure that you're not overpaid. A lot of times some people omit information, and when we don't know it, then it causes that person that additional stress whenever there's an overpayment letter sent. But keep in mind, even those particular items are changing under this new commissioner. And even that particular amounts, they're looking at, they lower so that those particular overpayments can be paid back at a much lower rate. But always ask the question. If there's something that you don't understand, make sure that you ask the questions and ask what the effect may be based on some of the answers that you may have already provided. That's something that the Social Security Administration should always do in regards to letting you know what the effects are of different things that you may do, and if how this is going to affect your SSI. So the more communication you have with us, the better it is all the way around. Okay, let's take a look. Again, very simply, please let us know if you have an outstanding warrant for your arrest, convicted for a crime, or if you have a violation in a condition of your parole or probation. And the next slide, SSI for children. Now, Maria, before I start into children, do we have any questions for the adults?
There's a number of questions now that are popping up, particularly people asking about how to calculate fair share, what expenses are considered for fair share.
Well, each individual household is different. So you would need to have the SSI technician at your local office give you based on your answers, because each person's rent is different. So there's no particular step calculation that I could give you. You would have to speak with the local office for that.
Someone did ask too that she works with adults in an emergency shelter. Will homeless adults receive the full amount of benefits since they don't pay rent?
That's correct. That is correct. Usually they do. But again, you're looking at a population that may be of veterans, and a lot of times veterans benefits will have an effect on how much they receive from their SSI. And again, veterans benefits or Social Security benefits would affect on how much SSI they would receive.
And again, what expenses, someone asked about paying, again, fair share. I think this is such a confusing area. We always get lots of questions. What expenses do we divide by the number of family members?
Your rent, your electric, your gas, There are some others, but what I would refer you to is going to the SSA.gov website, and under that, there's a booklet called Supplemental Security Income, and it will give you more of a listing as for what could be counted for your fair share.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, let's see. There's just, let's see. A couple people ask about if they're ever going to increase the asset limit for social or for SSI, the $2,000, if that's ever, and I think it's been discussed, right?
Yes, it is. And it's in a hot discussion right now. Again, Commissioner O'Malley is looking to change a lot of different items of our policies. And that is definitely one that's on the table.
Okay. Well, once you go on, I'm just reviewing some of the questions now. Some of them are fairly detailed. So if you can just continue on, we'll go back.
Okay. Well, let's move forward. Okay. Now, as for children, if you're under 18, the child has a physical or mental impairment or a combination that results in marked or severe limitation in functioning. The child must be either blind or disabled. If the child is blind, he or she must meet the same definition of blind as applies for adults. Condition must be expected to last at least 12 months or result in death. Very similar to the adults, but remember, children requirements are just slightly different than adults. Okay, next slide. SSI requirements again. Disabled children living in households with limited income and resources may be eligible to receive SSI benefits. For eligibility, the income assets of disabled children and parents living in a household are assessed by child support, Social Security auxiliary benefits, gifts, foster care payments. There are very, very specific rules on this information, and this could affect the eligibility or the full amount being received on behalf of that particular child. So again, going to your local office or during your appointment, whenever they're doing a redetermination of your benefits, they're going to explain to you of how these different incomes are either going to change the amount of your Social Security or of your SSI payment, or they're going to say it could be that there would be no change. But a lot of times with foster care payments, if you're receiving that, that usually does block some of the SSI benefits. Let's look at the next slide. We're always going to make a new determination for a child that is turning 18. We're no longer counting the income and resources of that particular parent to determine the eligibility of the payment. If the child continues to live with parents, but remember, we don't care about the food part. We're just looking at the shelter. So if they're not paying their fair share of shelter, then there may be a lower SSI payment. And that goes back to your living arrangements. Are you paying your fair share of the composition of that house? As for the SSI application, it can be made as early as the day of the 18th birthday. Let me just tell you this. Usually the Social Security offices are anywhere from 4 to 6 months out for an appointment. So therefore, what I would suggest is at least a month before the child is turning 18, that you make the appointment. If you come across an office that says, oh, we have appointments available, please remind them that if you do keep that appointment, that they need to hold on to that application until that child's 18th birthday. If it is submitted prior to the 18th birthday, DDS will automatically deny it because that person is still being considered a child. So it is very, very important that any application that is filed for a child that is turning 18, that application is not submitted until at least their 18th, the day of their 18th birth. Okay, next. As for those particular children in turning 18 in foster care, they can file for an SSI application. If they live in a foster care situation, alleges blindness or disability, appears likely to meet all the non-medical eligibility requirements when foster care payments terminate, expects foster care payments to cease within 180 days of the application filing date, or is within 180 days of losing foster care eligibility. This is very important in regards to those that are turning 18 and are considered foster children, that they do have a little bit more leeway in which to file for their particular SSI application, as opposed to those that are turning 18 and filing for an adult benefit. Now, as we go to the next one, SSI and the homeless. As for a transient, an individual with no permanent living arrangement, for example, no fixed place of residence, they're neither a member of a household or a resident of an institution. If you are homeless, you can receive your SSI benefit by having them deposited into your personal bank account, having your benefits mailed to a third party, having a relative or a third party be assigned as your representative payee, or having your benefits directed to a direct express card. We always suggest, and there are a lot of banks that are available in Western Pennsylvania that will open a personal bank account. Of course, the usual of, positive identification and your social security number would have to be provided. There are several agencies that will advocate for you in which to get your particular benefits. But we always suggest that hopefully that they will have a bank of their choosing in which to set up an account. Although they do not have a permanent living arrangement, it could be that they're just waiting for a particular space in which to reside. But again, we always highly recommend that you have a bank of your choice as opposed to someone else making that choice for you. Next slide. Okay. How do we begin? Remember, complete the claim online if you are between the age of 18 and 65. If you've never been married, you're a U.S. citizen, and you have no previous claim. So in other words, you can do this online if you weren't a child receiving an SSI benefit. So if this is one that is transitioning till the age of 18 and they were receiving SSI prior to, then they would not be able to do this online. They would need to contact the local office or the 800 number in which to make an appointment. As for if they have a work history, meaning that they could also be an applicant for SSDI, and they also have low wages that they could possibly receive also SSI. Again, if they complete the claim online, they can do so at the same time because one will lead into another. The only one that you do not want to try to go online is if you have already had SSI previously.
And Elaine, I think this is a good time to ask you, we didn't talk about the fact that, receiving SSI entitles someone to medical assistance. Someone asks a question, a parent, about her son's 19 and still attending high school, and he has an IEP, has autism. And then they received a letter saying he's not right. Oh, okay. Okay. This is a different question. I'm sorry. This is about trying to prove that he is still in school. She said that she's having difficulty proving that he's still active in school, and she's asking how to best prove that. That's a different question. There's another one on medical assistant. But if you can, yeah.
If he or she is still in school, there's a form. I believe it's the 1372, but don't quote me. But if you go on to the SSA.gov website and type in student form, it should give you a listing of the different forms for students. And that form, like I said, I believe it's the 1372. That form needs to be provided to the school district, and it needs to be signed off that they are still a full-time student.
Thank you. And the other question that does relate to medical assistance, that you explain conversion from child to adult for SSDI, stating the benefits would continue until 19 years old for an 18-year-old that's still in school. She asks, does the same age and high school attendance apply for SSI? Says, my son is currently 18 and a junior in high school. Could he qualify for SSI since he will not graduate until he's over 18? And then she said, we were also told that medical assistance will be discontinued and he must apply for Social Security to determine if his benefits are available.
Okay, so right now he's under 18 and he's receiving SSI, correct?
Yes, my son is currently 18 and a junior in high school. She's asking, could he qualify for SSI since he will not graduate until he's over 18?
Well, because he's receiving SSI at this point and he's turning 18, he needs to contact, or the parent needs to contact Social Security to get an adult decision or see if they can extend the current application because he's still in school. So based on that, he's still in school, he still has the disabling condition of what he had as a child. There needs to be a conversation with the local office to see if they can extend it up until he graduates, and they can do that up until the age of 22. So it's very important to do that right now and make that appointment.
Right.
Okay.
And again, that sort of to clarify, some kids are getting medical assistance, especially in Pennsylvania, but may not be getting cash benefits. So
Correct.
When they turn 18, they'll be eligible for cash benefits potentially. So that's why the SSI application at that time is important to then continue medical assistance. Is that?
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Next slide. Again, if you, like I was just saying to Maria, make sure that you contact us right away when you have a question in regards to SSI, especially if they're under 18, they're about to change to 18. We have certain steps that they could follow, and there's certain exemptions that they may even extend the SSI eligibility until that particular disabled adult child actually graduates. But again, if you don't let us know about these changes, then it could be that benefits could have been terminated when they could have been extended. So keeping in contact with your local office, visiting our website, getting more information, or even calling the 800 number in which to just set up an appointment to get some of your questions answered would be the best recommendation that I can do in which to alleviate not only your stress, but also making sure that you have that you navigate the process that possibly your SSI benefits will not even be interrupted. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay, we want to go back a couple, I think. Okay.
Am I at the right spot, Elaine? I'm sorry.
I think we are.
You did
No,
that
yeah,
work.
yeah, we're good. You're pretty quick on a trigger there, Patty. All right, so what happens next? Just like in SSDI, we're going to forward this information over to the Department of Disability Determination Services. They're going to review your particular information. They're going to obtain those medical records. They may ask you for additional information. If you are working or if you are working closely with Achieva or Achieva Family Trust, please remember that, they do have some navigators there that can help you through the process. But if you keep in contact with them as opposed to Social Security, please make sure it's a good contact. Because there has been times, and I'm sure Maria and Patty can attest to it, that that we're reaching out to them to find out, have you been in contact with this particular applicant? We can't get a hold of them. The mail that we have sent to them has been returned, and they have an application in process with our Disability Determination Services. And we need to speak with them because we want to have a medical consult exam with them, and we don't know how to get a hold of them. If you don't talk to Social Security and you don't want to talk to DDS, if you have if you need assistance, again, Achieva Family Trust, Achieva are very, very good in making sure that that you are going through the process as quickly as possible with the information that they have about you. Please, please use all your supports, because we want to make sure that you are getting a fair shake as we go through the process. If something's missing, we're going to be able to help and support you on that. But a lot of times when I say we, I'm talking about the Social Security Administration. We look to a lot of help and support from agencies like Achieva Family Trust. So therefore, if you have any changes that you're unable to get through to the Social Security Administration, please feel free to use your supports in which to get the word out to where we can find you. Because if we are unable to find you and we're unable to complete our decision, usually that's going to be an automatic denial, because we did not have enough information to make that determination. So I cannot express more. Please let us know where you are, especially if things have changed in the short time that we have been reviewing your case. Next, as for the special qualifications for requirements for citizens, what it is that when you have become a qualified alien, one of the annotations in that category, and meet all of the rules for SSI eligibility, of course, we're always looking for the limits on income and resources. Those particular requirements are how we are going to look at the non-citizens. So therefore, if you look at our next slide, there are 7 types of qualified aliens. So I'm not going to bore you by reading all of the information on this particular slide, But there, if you look to the next particular slide, you will see the additional 4 that may qualify as an alien and be able to receive those particular SSI benefits. Again, the different documentation that maybe the asylee or the refugee may have will expedite the matters. All of this information is based on how we research it with Homeland Security and verifying the immigration status of that particular person that is applying. Next slide. Like I said, the Department of Human Services or Homeland, they are going to ask you for the I-94. They might ask for the I-551. Of course, if there's an order from an immigration judge showing withholding or of removal or granting asylum, if there's a DD 214 of that particular non-citizen in the armed forces, it is very possible that they might qualify. What if there's a sponsor? Generally, we're going to count that particular income and asset of the sponsor to determine the eligibility of SSI. Just like we tell everyone else, the DDS will make that particular decision of an approved or denied claim. We will send a letter. It will come by the United States Postal System. If you get a phone call that says, oh, we've determined your case and we need your information. If it is not identified and we have not sent you a letter in advance that we're making a determination, it's most likely a scam. So if you have any question before you give any personal identifiable information, please contact either the Social Security Administration, or during this process, you'll know who your particular worker is on your case from the Department of Determination Services. Therefore, they will have their number posted on that particular letter that you received, but we do not call you out of the blue unless we have already been sending information to you. If you are approved, the amounts will show on your benefit. As for when the payments are going to start, and as we discussed earlier, your reporting responsibilities. When in doubt, report everything. If you're not approved, the letter is going to tell you about the appeal process. Remember, you only have 60 days from the date of the letter to do your appeal. If you need some assistance with that, make sure that you use all available supports or contact your local Social Security office, and we will be glad to go through the process and make sure that you have the information that you want to add, indicating that there is more information that was not considered. This is the easier part. Determining what the differences are between SSDI versus SSI. As you can see, if you're under Social Security Disability Insurance, this particular payment is coming from the Social Security Trust Fund. And it's all based on those wages over the years that you've paid, because that's paying into Social Security. Insurance is every time that you receive the paycheck and you had those taxes taken out to Social Security, that is the insurance that brought you to this point that you qualified for Social Security disability. It pays for benefits for disabled individuals who were unable to work regardless of their income and resources. A very big difference between that and SSI. We don't care about income and resources. For your SSDI, you have received those particular benefits because it has been determined that your disabling condition is keeping you from working for at least a year or may end in death. If we were talking income and resources, that's whenever we're looking at your SSI. That has everything to do with if you're going to receive a benefit along with having that disability application. As for your particular benefit under the SSDI program, it pays benefits for workers and for adults disabled since childhood. There must meet the insured status, meaning that their particular work that they've paid into the Social Security Trust Fund out of those taxes that have been paid out of their wages. Again, that's how we're able to pay an amount from the SSDI portion of the trust fund. Remember, SSI, if you're receiving it, it's really looking at the need that that particular program will offer to you if you have an approved claim. Again, with SSI, I want to emphasize, remember, if you start receiving SSI, it does not mean that a family member could receive SSI. It is all based on the disability of that individual, which is different from Social Security disability insurance. A worker could have their record paying a spouse or children because that is a benefit of the insurance, that it not only covers the worker, there's also benefits covering the family members. Supplemental Security Income is individual. Social Security disability insurance is for the worker and their family. Next. Okay, looks like we're getting towards the end. But Maria, do you have a question for me before we?
Lots of questions, Elaine. So I'm just going to kind of go through because some of them are related to the SSDI questions and some are related to SSI. So if you bear with me, one question is the woman is saying she's raising her sister's children. There are 3 and one aged out. Should the other 2, I guess, benefits have been raised based on the one child aging out of benefits?
Correct.
So the other 2 children should be receiving higher benefits based on that.
Correct. So it sounds to me that this may be a survivor type claim. When the older of the siblings turned 18 and had graduated from high school, then it reverts back to that sharing that family maximum bucket that we were talking about earlier. At that point, then it will be divided more among those particular children. Now, if they do not see an increase, then number one, that would be telling me that that family maximum was pretty high for that particular family members. So at that point, they have already met either the 50% of the benefit that they were sharing, or if it's a survivor benefit, then it's 71.5% that each child would be eligible to receive.
Then we had a question about the app and the phone number for reporting wages never works. What is SSA doing to improve the system for reporting?
They're overhauling everything. If in that particular regard, if that number is not working, if you go to the SSA.gov website and have access to that, you can also report that online through a My Social Security account. If that fails for you, especially if you're a payee and there's some glitches in that particular part of the system, then unfortunately you would need to call the 1-800 number, and they will be able to take that information for you.
Okay. Somebody asked about their adult sons receiving $943 dollars per month for SSI, which I think is the maximum, correct, this year. And so, and his wife has started to receive Social Security benefits, I assume retirement, and he's not receiving benefits. He's asking, will his son's benefits become SSDI for $512, 50% of his mother's per month, and the balance being $431 as SSI. So I guess he's asking, will he start to receive a combination?
Okay. First of all, an application has to exist. So if that particular disabled adult child is eligible for SSI, then they must file for benefits as a auxiliary adult child from the mother. I believe that's what you said.
Yes. Yes.
So when her application is completed, then there should be an application for that particular disabled adult child. And at that point, yes, it'll be a combination of the Social Security benefit and their SSI. As long as they receive at least $1 in SSI, their Medicaid will begin. Now, as for the Medicare, their Medicare, usually you have to be on the SSD for at least 24 months in which to qualify for Medicare. So during the time period that you're waiting for Medicare to begin, you will still continue to receive Medicaid as long as you receive at least $1 from the SSI program.
Okay. And this kind of, I think you may have answered some of this. Is somebody is asking how the best way to report changes to SSI, and also someone else is asking about that their adult daughter is scheduled for an evaluation, but she's going to start a part-time job in June. Do I need to call and let them know about this? So again, it's a reporting, how do we report this information?
Okay, so you have indicated that there's going to be a redetermination appointment before she starts working in June. Did I
Yeah.
have that correct?
That's what I'm yeah, I think that's what I assume.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And again, it's along with the best way to report changes to SSI.
okay. So in that part, first of all, at that redetermination, I would definitely have that conversation with that particular technician saying that my daughter is starting to work in June. That'll be her first month of wages. The expectation is that she'll make $200 a month. In that particular part, what will happen is that particular technician will give, again, the letter of responsibility of what she is required to do every month. They will give the different avenues, even though I understanding from a previous question that it doesn't always work of reporting your wages. Bottom line is, if you're unable to report the wages one way, a lot of times we will ask you to mail in your pay stubs. So what I would suggest is when she gets her first pay stub, that she makes a copy of it and sends it to the local office so that they can start opening a file indicating that she is working for this particular employer and the expected wages are going to be as such. So we will do an estimate based on that initial pay stub that she has received. The best way is to continue send those pay stubs at least once a month so that we can update the record and then pay her accordingly. If there is any question that you just want to continue to use because these are the hours that are continuing onward from June, July, August, and so forth, then we will continue using that estimate. But if her hours reduce or if they even increase, please let us know right away, because that's going to make an adjustment on how much she's going to continue to receive from SSI. You don't want to lose your benefits from not reporting on time. So therefore, we give you a 2-month leeway process. So the benefits, or I should say, your wages do not affect your benefits unless it's 2 months down the line.
Mhm.
So the earnings that you receive in the month of June will not affect you until the month of August. So therefore, you give us the pay stubs, at least you have 2 months in which to get ready for maybe a decrease in how much you're receiving right now from your SSI benefit. But if you don't let us know, then we wouldn't know right away, and that could cause you to have an overpayment. And that's what I want you to avoid. So the best way in which to start off this particular process is making sure that she keeps a tally or keeps her pay stubs available that she can turn them in on a monthly basis. If there's any changes in her schedule, then she needs to call and let the Social Security office know. If she fails to do that, or if there is, if your responsibility is delayed in letting us know, then that's opening her up for an overpayment. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay, just a question about if the food, since it's no longer counted, does it have any impact on people in personal care homes who are on SSI?
If they're in a personal care home, it usually is that they only get $30
Right.
spending money. So, it's already, there's no, at this point right now,
Yeah.
I should say, at this point right now, there is no effect.
No change, yeah.
$30.
And then can an adult child be eligible for back benefits to the date of their disability?
Okay, if you're talking about a child, SSDI applicant, then of course you know that there's always that 5-month waiting period in which that they are not going to be paid for. As for the SSI, it's based on the application. So if you just apply, and even though your date of onset might be prior to, we're still looking at the income and resources based on the application date.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the next question relates to as a rep payee, I think this person's asking if the SSI beneficiary is paying bills to a household individual as opposed to a provider, like paying directly for utility. It says he's asking if again it's being paid to a household, and how does the rep payee maintain an audit trail of what they're paying? I guess again, if
Okay. Well, first of all, I applaud this person wanting to keep everything organized. Usually, with a representative payee report, the information that we're asking you, we have paid you X amount of dollars over the period of a year to for their food and shelter, for clothing, things of that nature. These are very broad questions, and we're going to ask that particular representative payee, did you put all of that money towards that rent, towards their food and shelter? If that's the case, then they have checked off the first box. If they purchased a computer for them, what I would suggest is save your receipt. You really need to have that receipt around because we're going to be subtracting that from the amount that we sent you, and that would be subtracted from the food and shelter of the first category. If you saved everything for this particular person and did not spend it on food and shelter, or you did not spend it on different things that were beneficial to that person, then we need to see those bank accounts. If it was something under the SSI program, remember that we're looking at either a $2,000 income and resource or $3,000 if it's a couple. So if you're saving this money, more than likely it's probably going to be under an SSDI program. But if not, then you might be looking at an ABLE account or a trust of something that, of course, Achieva could assist you with in making sure that you're not over those resource limits. But most likely, there's only 3 categories that a representative payee accounting form would be looking to. And that first category is food and shelter. And if you have used all of their particular checks for that particular amount, that's the amount that you would put in that particular box. If it was something outside of that, then you would put that in question 2 and subtract that from the overall. And if you have question 3, if you saved anything, you should have that banking statement or that financial statement showing how much has been saved out of the benefits that you received during that current year. But if you keep it separate in those 3 categories, you should be okay.
And along those lines, someone did ask about who is the enforcement agency to report potential nefarious activities or complain against a payee organization that is, yeah. So who to report that to?
You contact Social Security immediately. We will open an investigation based on the merit of the claim or the allegation against that particular representative payee. Unfortunately, there are more cases that, the representative payee is doing exactly what they have been asked to do. However, the recipient or the beneficiary likes to have additional spending money, and they just don't agree with whatever the representative payee has to do, in which to making sure that their needs and are met as opposed to their wants necessarily. But if they do see that there has been some type of illegal activity against a particular recipient or beneficiary, please report that immediately to the Social Security Administration, and we will open an investigation and also ask the Office of Inspector General to assist.
And let's see. Just going through these, there's so many. One person asked about her 28-year-old autistic son receiving SSI since about age 19. He's working minimally since age 21. How would I know if he's now eligible for SSDI based on his work history? Would Social Security contact us?
Yes, we would, because one of the terms of receiving SSI is that if you become able in which to receive benefits from another resource, such as Social Security disability, you must apply for that. So on our particular records, we go through that information at least once a year, that our computer systems do matches for additional benefits that may be due. But if you find that your particular adult child has been making earnings and you just wanted to verify, we have no problem of you contacting us and letting us review the records to see if possibly he could qualify for SSD.
Okay. And can an applicant reapply after the 60 days for X, Y, or Z reason?
If that sounds like that they did not appeal during the 60 days on a particular application, they can always reapply for benefits if they do not want to pursue the appeal.
And someone asked a question about they recently applied for SSD for their adult son with autism based on, it sounds like the parent's record. And the Department of Labor has sent questionnaires to my disabled son and wife, who's his Payee. The son can't complete their questionnaire on his own. What should they do? It says, is it enough that my wife completes the questionnaire survey for the Department of Labor?
Yes. Remember, disability is based on what that particular person can do in regards to work. So that's why the Department of Labor is sending you that documentation. On that particular survey, if I remember, it will ask if someone else was helping them complete that particular document. So you can always put your information down that you were the person that was helping them complete the document based on that your son was unable to do so by themselves. If you want to put in a separate paper explaining any type of observances that you might have about your son working or what they can't, what you can see that they can do or what their limitations might be. That's always very helpful for those that are looking over that for the vocational experiences that your son can do.
Thank you. This question, and again, are you able to stay with us for a while, Elaine? We kind of get through these. Yeah. This person says it's an 18-year-old child, still student receiving SSDI from disabled parent, says child is also disabled, will qualify for SSI on her own. Should she apply for SSI or wait until she's 19? So
at this point of the information, because I'm not looking directly at their particular record, I always defer to the local office for the technician to review and tell them the best course of action to do. So I would definitely set up an appointment in which that they can discuss these questions and then know exactly how they're going to navigate through the process.
okay. The next question's a little tricky in the sense of someone getting an inheritance, because it says, can Social Security claim funds for benefits or medical assistance if an SSI or SSDI recipient receives a direct inheritance after they've been transitioned to Social Security benefits? So again, go ahead. Yeah, it's a little complicated.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if the inheritance was prior to them transitioning to Social Security disability, that is a very tricky situation. So at that point, it is based on when the inheritance was provided. So if it was after they had already transitioned to SSI, there should not be any implication that they have to pay back anything to the Commonwealth or to or an overpayment of their SSI. But the documentation that they provide us will make that determination. So the date of the inheritance that's what's going to count.
And again, that's where we always talk about the ability to use ABLE accounts and special needs trusts potentially to help to shelter some assets if the timing, as you say, we can do that. What happened?
On, I guess. Yeah, they must have shut us down, Maria.
Are we timed out?
I think so. 12:07.
Patty, do you know what's going on?
I think Patty left us too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there was still like 19 questions left, but it's showing participants. I don't get it.
It looks like we're still recording.
And it looks like there's still participants.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how about if we just keep going on?
Okay.
Yeah. Because we're not seeing the slides, but it says, can Social Security claim, oh no, we already did that one. Okay, that was answered. It says, are you able to receive SSDI and SSI at the same time? Which can a person receive SSI from her husband if he is 65 and she's younger, receiving SSD? But
Well, remember, if you're not at the federal poverty rate, and I believe we said it was $943 of SSI.
yeah,
So if they're only receiving $500 from Social Security Disability or SSD, then they will receive the additional amount from the SSI program to get them to that rate.
right. Thank you. And if my son moves to SSDI when my husband retires and then is able to get a job, staying under SGA, does he move back to SSI? I wouldn't think so, right?
Mm, If he was receiving SSD, is okay, let me just make sure I understand. He's receiving SSD because he was working and now he's gone under SGA. Is that
So I think it says if my son moves to SSDI when my husband retires, so he becomes an adult disabled child
Mhm.
benefit and he's able to get a job, excuse me, staying under SGA, does he move back to SSI? No, right?
No.
It's still it's still SSDI as an adult. And his wages just have, I mean, again, as long as he's under SGA, he should be fine, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And remember, there's always that trial work period of 9 months.
Right.
Even if he goes over SGA, we're going to count 9 of those that he's over SGA.
Yeah.
And if he's over SGA for 9 months, and it doesn't have to be consecutive, then we will revert back to that his benefits will be suspended. And if he goes under SGA, then he just needs to call us and we'll turn the benefits back on.
Okay. Next question is, my daughter's turning 18 next month, receiving Social Security from my husband. Let's see, my husband's security when he retired. Is she eligible to apply for Social Security benefits? I mean, it sounds like she's already, wonder if she's talking about SSI benefits.
Okay, that's what it sounds like. Okay, at this point right now, SSI, and if they have moved to SSD because they're no longer receiving SSI, I would need to see that a little bit closer, Maria.
Yeah, perhaps.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
I
if
need a little bit more information on
Yeah.
that before.
Okay. All right. Sorry. It says, do I notify Social Security if the parent's income is changed and my adult son receives SSI? So it's an adult son receiving SSI, and she's asking if the parent's income changes. So that goes back to if he's living in the household, right?
It doesn't matter if he's an adult.
Yeah.
And we're looking at his own merit if he's paying his fair share.
Right. Right. Okay.
I think did Patty just come back on? Oh, she's connecting the audio. Here she is.
All right.
Patty?
Yeah.
I guess not. I see the attendee level is starting to fall.
Yeah. It looks like 94.
I don't know if she's interesting, Maria.
Yes, I don't know what happened.
No. Yeah, it's moving fast now.
So there's still quite a few questions. I don't know, again, how long. Someone's saying, okay, they're saying we can see you and we can still hear you. So they're still on. Okay. All right. So, you're muted, Patty.
I love technology. It's almost like a comedy show. Did you unmute yourself, Patty? Because I still see red on you. Okay, Maria, fire away at another question since we still have some people listening. Did I just lose Maria?
Unmute. Okay. How does becoming eligible for Social Security affect SSI and SSDI? My person receives a combination. Again, unless they're talking about Social Security is retirement, I'm not sure what this person means.
Okay, if you are receiving both, the larger part, if it's usually Social Security, then we would take that amount and subtract that from the higher of the SSI. So again, the simplest example I would have is that you would get $500 from Social Security, and then you would get another $443 from the SSI program to get you to the level of the SSI amount for 2024.
Okay. She's saying this person saying her son is or his son is collecting SSI since he was 21 and has worked part-time, usually 12 hours or less a week. Is it possible for him to apply or switch to SSDI? He's now 31.
Okay, in that particular case, again, it's all based on their Social Security history and their work. So it's possible it could be switched, but if you haven't received a letter yet, usually Social Security will know that you are now qualified for that particular benefit. But it does not hurt to give us a call so we can take a look to see if you have actually enough quarters to qualify for SSD.
Okay. And I guess there is someone asked about the fact sheet listing 733 as the max benefit for 2016. I don't know if that's on one of the slides or if somebody has that, but it's 943 this year, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And does income from a job through OVR with a job coach count the same as income from a regular job?
Usually, if you're in an OVR program, that's something that is waived. But again, whenever you're going through the interview of that redetermination, because they're asking you about not only your vocational and wages, they're going to ask you, are you in any type of, OVR training?
Yeah.
If you're being paid. So, remember, usually the first $65 plus an additional 20 is what they consider free money if you're in a program like that. So if you are, under that particular amount, then it's not going to count or reduce your SSI.
And this is just again, a question about the medical benefits. I know this was really cash benefits, but this person does ask for a dual eligible who's eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. Do they get to choose which coverage you want, or does one trump the other? That's like a coordination of benefits question.
Right. The bottom line is if you qualify for Medicare, then each state is going to say, you know what, you qualify for Medicare, and whatever is not picked up from Medicare, Medicaid would kick in. So Medicare would be the primary, Medicaid would be secondary because, of course, it's less expensive on the budget of that particular state.
Right. And do parents who are payees for an adult disabled child have to fill out the yearly payee accounting form?
Usually if it's mailed to you, we really do ask you to do that. Now it seems like it's less frequent that we're going to be doing that on a yearly basis. If nothing really has changed over the years, we won't send you that particular document, but initially it's on a yearly basis. So if you just started receiving benefits on behalf of someone else, you may have to fill that out for a couple of years.
And that is, let's see if there's any, most of this is, we're still on. Okay, just one last, my daughter receives SSI for disability. As long as she receives this, is she eligible for medical assistance? If so, well, she's asking, does that include dental and vision? But the answer to the first question is
Okay, I can
yes.
answer the first question.
Right.
As long as they receive at least $1 in SSI, their Medicaid will continue. Now, as for the additional benefits, I would definitely talk to the county assistance office, and they could tell you what type of plan they have chosen on their Medicaid.
Oh, and actually, there is one last one that I think is probably important. Now, as someone said about the two previous questions regarding turning 65 and does SSI or Social Security reclaim paid out SSI or medical assistance, is that not maybe related to Social Security being able to, if someone qualifies for Social Security benefits and they've been receiving SSI and they're getting a back payment from Social Security disability, then it is, I'm making the leap that this might relate to this, that SSI can reclaim the amount they paid out, right? From
Right. That's what happens. So in that particular case, both of the applications were filed. But of course, the Social Security disability wasn't processed prior to the eligibility of the SSI.
yes.
Because remember, there's that 5-month waiting period. So depending on if the SSI was processed and they started paying that particular person, now the SSD is due, there will be a hold on that underpayment that is due on the SSD. Reason being is because they signed an agreement with their particular state, in this case with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it was stated that if they would receive anything from SSD, that they would pay back the program of the SSI.
Right.
So that particular case, the SSI technicians would review the claim, release the money that was required from that particular state, and the residual value would be paid to them once that was paid.
Okay. And I think that's really the bulk of the everybody, I think most questions have been answered, hopefully. And yeah, thank you for staying on that additional time. And we had lots of good questions. They were, and yeah, very helpful.
I was glad to be there.
Thank you all.